What happens when a formally trained Eastern doctor discovers his mail-order bride from Chicago isn't just a nurse, but secretly practices ancient Apache healing arts learned from the tribe that raised her after her family was killed? In 1875, New Mexico, where prejudice runs deeper than arroyos, and healing comes in many forms. Two medical minds must unite against disease discrimination and those who profit from suffering. Hit that like button and subscribe for this powerful tale where science meets spirit and love bridges two worlds of medicine. Young doctor's mail-order bride secretly knows Apache medicine that saves town but nearly destroys everything. William Hawthorne pressed his stethoscope against the chest of his 10th patient that morning, listening to the telltale rattle of another respiratory infection. At 28, he was the youngest and only formally trained doctor in Sagewood, New Mexico territory, having graduated from Harvard Medical School just 3 years prior. His clinic, built with his inheritance, was modern by frontier standards, clean, organized, stocked with the latest medicines from back east. But for all his training, he was overwhelmed. The town had grown rapidly, with the silver boom bringing miners, ranchers, merchants, and their families. Disease spread quickly in the overcrowded conditions. He needed help, specifically someone who understood medicine and could manage the clinic while he made house calls. The advertisement he'd placed was specific. Doctor seeks educated wife with medical knowledge, must be capable of managing clinic, comfortable with frontier life, and possessed of compassionate disposition. Nursing experience preferred. He'd received 12 responses, but only one stood out. Catherine Mills from Chicago claimed to be 25, educated at a nursing college with experience in city hospitals. Her photograph showed a composed woman with unusual eyes, green with gold flecks, and dark hair pulled back severely. Her letters were intelligent, asking detailed questions about the types of cases he saw, the available medicines, the local climate's effects on health. She'd been oddly specific about certain things. Did he have access to willow bark, desert, sage, prickly pear? He'd assumed she was interested in supplementing traditional medicine with known folk remedies, which showed admirable pragmatism. Now she was arriving, and William stood at the stage depot in his best suit, medical bag at his feet, in case of emergencies, even during his personal time. The town council members had gathered, too curious about the doctor's mail-order bride. In a town where his position made him important, his choice of wife was considered community business. "Hope she's not too delicate," Judge Harper commented. "Frontier's no place for Eastern flowers." "Miss Mills has hospital experience," William replied. "She's seen worse than what Sagewood offers." "If you say so, Doc." The stage rolled in, dusty and creaking from the journey. Passengers began disembarking. A traveling salesman, a Mexican family, two cowboys, and then her. Catherine Mills stepped down with unusual grace, as if she could sense the ground before her feet touched it. She wore a practical gray traveling dress, but something about her movement seemed different, foreign. She didn't move like an Eastern lady at all. Her eyes found his immediately, and William felt a jolt of recognition he couldn't explain. Those unusual eyes held depths he hadn't expected, knowledge that seemed older than her years. "Dr. Hawthorne," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't place. Not quite Eastern, with undertones of something else. "Miss Mills, welcome to Sagewood." She smiled, and he noticed she was scanning the crowd with the practiced eye of someone assessing threats or patience. Her gaze lingered on certain people. Mrs. Patterson's swollen ankles barely visible beneath her skirts. Old Tom's labored breathing. The Peterson boy's fevered look. "You have sick people here," she said quietly. "Many sick people." "How can you tell?" She caught herself, as if she'd revealed too much. The way they carry themselves, hospital experience, you understand." But it was more than that, William sensed. The way she'd identified illness from mere observation spoke of deeper knowledge. Judge Harper stepped forward. "Miss Mills, welcome. The whole town's been curious about the doctor's bride." "Thank you, Judge." She shook his hand, and William saw Harper wince slightly. Later, the judge would mention his arthritis had stopped hurting for the first time in months after that handshake, though he couldn't explain why. They walked to William's clinic-home combination, Catherine observing everything with those remarkable eyes. She paused at a patch of desert plants growing wild beside the building. "Ghost flower," she murmured, touching the white blooms. "Good for fever." "You know desert plants." I read about them in preparation for coming here, but her fingers traced the leaves with familiarity that spoke of years of practice, not recent study. Inside the clinic, Catherine came alive in a way that was both reassuring and puzzling. She examined his medical supplies with professional interest, but seemed more intrigued by what he didn't have. No calendula, no echinacea, no juniper preparations. I practice modern medicine, Miss Mills, not folk remedies. Something flickered in her eyes. Disappointment, amusement. Of course, forgive me, I sometimes forget the divide between traditional and modern methods. That evening over dinner at the boarding house where Catherine would stay until their wedding, she asked careful questions about his patients. The respiratory infections you mentioned in your letters, do they respond to standard treatments? Some do, others linger despite everything I try. Have you noticed if they're worse near the mine? William looked up sharply. How did you know about the mine? The smell of silver processing carries on the wind. Chemicals in the air would affect breathing. She caught herself again. We studied industrial health effects in Chicago, but Chicago nurses didn't typically study mining operations. William filed away another puzzle piece. Tell me about your training, he said. Catherine's hand stilled on her fork. St. Mary's Nursing College, graduated in 1872, worked at Chicago General for 2 years. And before her voice was carefully neutral. Your childhood, your family. Gone. Cholera epidemic when I was young. I was raised in an orphanage. The words were rehearsed hollow. I'm sorry. It was long ago. She changed the subject. Tell me about the local Apache. Do they come to you for treatment? Never. They have their own healers, suspicious of white medicine. He studied her. Why do you ask? One should understand all the medical practices in an area, even those considered primitive. The way she said primitive carried bitter irony. They were married 3 days later by Reverend Morrison, a simple ceremony with Judge Harper and his wife as witnesses. Catherine wore a blue dress that brought out the gold in her eyes. When William kissed her, he tasted something wild on her lips, sage and desert wind. Their wedding night was tentative, two strangers navigating new intimacy. But when Catherine let her hair down, William saw something that stopped his breath, a small tattoo behind her ear barely visible. A symbol he'd seen before on Apache warriors brought in for treatment. What is that? He asked, touching it gently. Catherine went rigid. A birthmark. It's not. It's Apache, a healing mark. She pulled away, wrapping herself in a robe. You're mistaken. Catherine, please, can we just be as we are tonight? Tomorrow brings enough challenges. He let it go, but the questions multiplied. The next morning brought those challenges in the form of an emergency. The Peterson boy, whom Catherine had noticed at the stage, was brought in convulsing with fever. I've tried everything, William said frantically, checking the boy's vitals. Quinine, laudanum, cooling baths. Nothing's working. Catherine watched the boy writhe, her hands clenching and unclenching. There might be something. What? I need desert willow bark, ghost flower root, and creosote leaves. Fresh. Those are Indian remedies. They're remedies that work. She snapped, then caught herself. I've seen them used in Chicago on immigrant patients who didn't respond to conventional treatment. William hesitated. The boy was dying. Get them, he said finally. Catherine ran out, returning remarkably quickly with the plants. She prepared them with practiced efficiency, creating a tea and a poultice. The way she worked was nothing like Chicago training. It was older, deeper, ritualistic almost. Hold him still, she commanded, and William obeyed. She got the tea into the boy drop by drop, placed the poultice on his chest, and then did something extraordinary. She began to sing. Softly in a language William didn't recognize but knew in his bones was Apache. The boy's convulsions slowed. His fever began to break. What did you do? William whispered. I helped him, Catherine said simply. But her eyes were full of fear. She'd revealed too much. By morning, the Peterson boy was sitting up asking for food. Word spread quickly. The doctor's new wife had saved a child conventional medicine couldn't help. Some called it a miracle. Others whispered darker things. The truth came out gradually, like water seeping through rock. Catherine tried to hide it, but her knowledge betrayed her at every turn. When Mrs. Rodriguez came in with a complicated pregnancy, Catherine's hands went exactly where they needed to be, finding the baby's position with uncanny accuracy. When a snake-bitten cowboy was brought in, she had the antivenom prepared before William even identified the species. The wound pattern, she explained weakly, but no Eastern training taught that. It was the Apache child that finally broke her secret open. A young girl, perhaps 7, was brought in by Mexican traders who'd found her wounded on the trail. Arrow-wound, infected, fevered. The traders said her people had been killed by bandits. Catherine took one look at the child and spoke in perfect Apache. "Be calm, little sister. You're safe." The child's eyes widened and she responded in the same language. William stood frozen. "You speak Apache?" Catherine didn't look at him, focused on the child. "Yes." Fluently. "Yes." "That's not something you learn in Chicago." "No." She was cleaning the wound with gentle efficiency, singing softly to calm the girl. "It's something you learn when Apache warriors find a white girl hiding under her family's burned wagon. When they take pity on her instead of killing her. When they raise her as their own for 12 years. William sank into a chair. 12 years. From age 8 to 20. Then the Army rescued me during a raid. Killed most of my Apache family. Sent me to a reform school to make me white again." Her voice was bitter. "They succeeded on the surface. Taught me proper English, proper manners, how to hide what I'd become. The nursing training. Real. After the reform school, I did train as a nurse. But everything important I learned from Grandmother Singing Bird, the tribe's medicine woman. She taught me healing that your Harvard professors would call savage superstition, but that actually works." "Why didn't you tell me?" Catherine looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Because you would have sent me away. Because everyone does when they learn I'm more Apache than white in my heart. Because I needed somewhere to belong, and your advertisement seemed like a chance, so you lied. I survived." She turned back to the child. "Just like this little one will survive if you let me treat her properly. With both medicines. Yours and mine." William watched Catherine work, saw the seamless blend of traditional and modern techniques. The antiseptic wash followed by herbal poultice, the morphine for pain, and the Apache prayers for spirit. The child relaxed, trusting Catherine completely. "She needs her people," Catherine said. "There's a peaceful band in the mountains. I can take her there. You know where they are. I always know. They're my people too in every way that matters." That night, William found Catherine packing. "You're leaving. You haven't asked me to, yet. But you will once you think about it. Once you realize what having a half Apache wife means for your reputation." "What if I don't want you to leave?" She laughed bitterly. "A Harvard doctor with a savage wife, your career would be ruined. My career is saving lives. You saved the Peterson boy. You're saving that Apache child. How many more could we save together?" Catherine turned to face him. "You don't understand. It's not just about medicine. I dream in Apache. I think in their ways. When I see illness, I see spirit sickness as much as body sickness. I'm not the proper Eastern lady you advertise for." "No," William agreed. "You're something far more valuable. You're a bridge between worlds." Before Catherine could respond, urgent knocking interrupted them. It was Judge Harper. "Doc, we've got trouble. There's fever spreading at Daminen. Already got 6 men down, and it's moving fast." William grabbed his bag. Catherine hesitated, then grabbed hers. A worn Apache medicine bundle she'd hidden in their bedroom. "You can't," William said, understanding. "If they see that, if I don't, people die." She met his eyes. "I'm tired of hiding who I am." At the mine, chaos reigned. Men lay groaning in the bunkhouse, burning with fever. The mine foreman in Patterson tried to bar Catherine's entry. "No women in the bunkhouse. No healers, you mean?" Catherine pushed past him. "This is typhoid. Your water supply is contaminated." "How can you know that?" "Because I've seen it before. Because," she stopped, then lifted her chin. "Because my Apache family dealt with it after white settlers poisoned their water source upstream." The silence was deafening. Then Patterson snarled, "Apache, you're Apache." "I'm a healer," Catherine said firmly, "and these men are dying." She went to work, William beside her. They made an extraordinary team. His scientific knowledge and her intuitive understanding, creating treatments neither could achieve alone. Catherine identified the contaminated well by smell, had the men moved to ventilated areas, and began treatments that combined carbolic acid with desert herbs. But not everyone was grateful. Word spread quickly that the doctor's wife was Apache raised, and opinions split violently. Some, like the families whose loved ones she'd saved, defended her. Others, led by Patterson and the town's more prejudiced citizens, demanded she leave. "She's a white woman corrupted by savages," Patterson declared at an emergency town meeting, "probably spying for them. How else does she know where the Apache camps are?" "She knows because she helps them, just like she helps us," Mrs. Peterson countered, holding her recovered son. "My boy would be dead without her." The debate raged. William stood to speak. "My wife has saved 7 lives since arriving. 7 people who would be dead if she only knew conventional medicine. Yes, she was raised by Apache. That knowledge is a gift, not a curse." "You're bewitched by her," Patterson spat. "She's probably got you under some heathen spell." "The only spell is competence," William shot back. "Something you'd recognize if you weren't blinded by hatred." The meeting ended without resolution, but the damage was done. The town was divided. That night, Catherine found the Apache child gone. "Where is she?" she asked the night nurse. Patterson's men took her, said she needed to be with proper authorities, not an Indian sympathizer. Catherine's calm shattered. She grabbed William's rifle. "You can't," William said, but he was already getting his horse. They rode hard to the army outpost where Patterson would have taken the child. They found her in a cage, literally a cage meant for prisoners, terrified and re-injured from rough handling. "Release her," Catherine demanded, but the army sergeant laughed. "On whose authority?" "Mine," William said, stepping forward. "As the territorial medical officer, I'm requisitioning this patient for treatment. She's Apache property." "She's a child," Catherine interrupted, and her voice carried something dangerous. "Release her, or I'll show you exactly what 12 years with Apache warriors taught me." Perhaps it was the way she stood, or the knife that appeared in her hand from nowhere, but the sergeant backed down. They took the child and rode not back to town, but to the mountains. "You know this is goodbye," Catherine said as they climbed higher. "Once I return her to her people, I can't come back. The town won't accept it." "Then we don't go back to town." Catherine stopped her horse. "What? There are other places that need doctors. Places where your knowledge would be valued, not feared. You'd give up your clinic. You're standing there for you. I'd give up much more than that." William reached for her hand. "Catherine, I've learned more about healing from you in a month than I learned in 3 years at Harvard. Not just about medicine, but about seeing patients as whole people, not just symptoms." They found the Apache band at sunset. The reunion between the child and her relatives was tearful. The Apache warriors regarded William with suspicion until Catherine spoke for him in their language. An elderly woman, clearly a person of respect, approached Catherine. They embraced, and Catherine broke down crying. "My teacher's sister," she explained to William. She says I've finally found my true path, walking between worlds." They returned to Sagewood 3 days later with a delegation of Apache, including their medicine man Black Crow Flying. Catherine had convinced both sides that cooperation could save lives. The reaction was immediate and violent. Patterson had gathered a mob. "You brought savages into our town." "I brought healers," William said firmly. "There's typhoid in the water. It'll spread unless we work together. The Apache know water purification methods, we don't. We don't need heathen magic." He was cut off by Mrs. Rodriguez going into labor. It was breach complicated, dangerous. Catherine and Black Crow Flying worked together, combining techniques while William monitored with his instruments. The Apache medicine man's manipulations, guided by Catherine's anatomical knowledge and William's surgical skills if needed, turned the baby. A healthy boy was born. In front of the entire town, Apache and white medicine had worked as one. "Still think it's heathen magic?" Catherine asked Patterson. But Patterson wasn't done. That night, he and his supporters set fire to the clinic. William and Catherine barely escaped, saving what medical supplies they could. Black Crow Flying and his warriors helped fight the blaze, but the building was lost. "This is my fault," Catherine said, standing in the ashes. "I should have stayed hidden." "No," said an unexpected voice. Judge Harper stepped forward, followed by most of the town. "This is Patterson's fault, and ours for letting fear rule us." Mrs. Peterson stepped up. We're rebuilding the clinic, bigger, better, with room for both kinds of medicine. The Apache won't be welcome, Patterson started. You're not welcome, Judge Harper interrupted. I'm charging you with arson and attempted murder. The Apache who helped fight the fire are heroes. You're a criminal. As Patterson was led away, the town came together. Mexican, white, and Apache worked side by side. The new clinic rose from the ashes with two wings, one for conventional medicine, one for traditional healing. Catherine struggled with her identity, sometimes seeming more Apache, sometimes more white, never quite either. I don't know who I am anymore, she confided to William one night. You're my wife, you're a healer. You're Catherine Singing Bird Hawthorne. He'd added her Apache name at their second wedding ceremony, performed by both Reverend Morrison and Black Crow Flying. That's a lot of names for one person. You're a lot of person for one name. The real test came with the scarlet fever outbreak. It struck the school, affecting white, Mexican, and Apache children alike. Neither medicine alone could stop it. Catherine and William worked tirelessly, creating a treatment that combined antibiotics newly arrived from back east with Apache sweat lodge techniques. Black Crow Flying and his healers worked alongside Eastern-trained nurses Catherine had recruited from Chicago. The death rate was a tenth of what it should have been. You did it, William told Catherine as they collapsed exhausted after the last child recovered. We did it, all of us. The success changed everything. Doctors from across the territory came to study their integrated methods. The government, instead of punishing the Apache cooperation, funded it as an experiment in cultural medical exchange. Catherine became pregnant during this time, and her anxiety grew with her belly. What if our child is rejected by both worlds? Then we'll make our own world, William promised. Their daughter was born during a meteor shower, which Black Crow Flying said marked her as a bridge between sky and earth. They named her Hope Rising Dawn Hawthorne. Patterson, released from jail, made one last attempt at destroying their peace. He brought in a government inspector, claiming Catherine was practicing medicine without a license. The inspector, Dr. Elmsworth from Washington, was prepared to shut them down until he saw Catherine perform an emergency amputation. Her technique was flawless, but she sang Apache prayers throughout. Where did you train? He demanded. In Chicago hospitals and Apache wiki-ups. In Eastern laboratories and desert healing grounds. I trained wherever healing was happening. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Dr. Elmsworth observed for a week, watching Catherine and William at work. He saw them save a Mexican vaquero from gangrene using maggot therapy, Apache technique, and carbolic acid conventional method. He watched them treat a white woman's hysteria with talk therapy and sage smudging. He observed them teaching both methods to students of all backgrounds. His report was revolutionary. The Hawthorne Clinic represents the future of American medicine, inclusive, adaptive, and remarkably effective. Mrs. Hawthorne should not only be licensed, but should teach her integrated methods at medical colleges. Catherine did receive her license, becoming the first person officially recognized for practicing both Western and Native American medicine. Years passed, the clinic grew into a hospital. Hope Rising Dawn grew up trilingual, as comfortable in Apache wiki-ups as in Eastern parlors. She eventually attended Harvard Medical School, then returned to further her parents' work. Catherine and William aged together, their love deepening with each shared patient, each life saved. They faced other challenges, political pressure, racial tensions, medical skeptics, but always together. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the town threw them a celebration. Apache, Mexican, and white citizens gathered as one community. Black Crow Flying, now elderly but still sharp, gave a speech. This woman came to us as a lost child. We gave her our medicine. She took it to the white world and made it stronger. Not Apache medicine, not white medicine, human medicine. This is the future. Judge Harper, also aged, added, William Hawthorne came here as a Harvard doctor. Catherine Mills came as a woman with secrets. Together they became something neither could be alone, healers of bodies and communities. That night, as they danced under stars, William asked Catherine, do you regret the difficult path? Every path to healing is difficult, but walking it with you made it bearable. Just bearable. Joyful, she amended, kissing him. Complicated and joyful. Their legacy lived on through their students, their children, and the countless lives saved by their integrated approach. Medical journals would later call them pioneers, but they saw themselves simply as healers who refused to let prejudice prevent healing. Catherine died first at 70, holding William's hand and surrounded by 3 generations of mixed heritage, her last words in 3 languages: Apache English and the universal language of love. William followed 6 months later, some said of a broken heart, but his final journal entries suggested otherwise. Going to join my beloved in whatever healing grounds await. We have more work to do on the other side, bringing together all the medicines of all the spirits. They were buried side by side, their headstone reading in Apache and English. They healed with both hands, loved with whole hearts, and proved that medicine, like love, knows no boundaries. The hospital they founded still stands now, called the Hawthorne Institute for Integrated Medicine. In the lobby, a portrait shows them as they were: William in his Harvard diploma, Catherine in her Apache medicine bundle, hands joined facing a future they created together.